Great job so far on activity 2. We're moving into our last video, video 9, for this activity. In video 8, we used Solver to calculate the number of units we needed to sell to break even. Now I want to use Solver to determine a similar question, except now I'm asking the number of units we need to sell to get a 15% profit margin. Remember, we already did this manually in a previous video, so if you're not comfortable with that profit margin formula, jump back to review that video. Before we use Solver in Excel for this problem, let's go to our note packet that we've been using. I want you to work on thinking about the Nike variables we're going to use to solve for the number of units in order to have a 15% profit margin. Pause the video for a minute and see if you can fill in the blanks on this chart. When you come back, I will walk you through the answers so you can check your work. Let's look at each one together. Now, I want my objective to represent profit margin instead of profit. Remember, the formula for profit was revenue minus cost, and it gave us a dollar amount. Profit margin is a percentage, and to calculate it, we divide profit by revenue. So in this case, for my objective cell, I want profit margin specifically, and I want to set it equal to 15% by changing the number of units. Units is still my variable in this problem. It's the value for which I am trying to solve. Let's jump into Excel now. From the previous problem that we did, I already have my revenue and cost formulas in Excel. However, in that video, I was calculating profit in terms of dollars. In this video, I want to calculate profit margin. To get profit margin, I need to divide profit, which is already here, by revenue. So I just want to alter this formula in cell D40. I'm going to add parentheses around the existing formula, so I'm dividing both revenue and cost, or revenue minus cost, by revenue. So I'm going to do a divide by revenue and just cell reference revenue again. I'm going to hit enter. Now I just need to go back to the Home tab and reformat that as a percentage. Right now, with the data we have in here, the percentage is 10%. In a minute, we'll use Solver to make that value equal to 15% by changing this number. We could kind of get there ourselves and see what Solver is actually doing. It's kind of just plugging in numbers. So 45 gets us close to 15, 44 gets us closer, and it's actually not even exactly 15, it's 14.55. So in a minute, Solver will get us that exact number. For now, let's set units equal to 1, just so we make sure we see Solver change to that 15% profit margin. Before we run Solver, let's double check the rules we wrote down in our note packet. We have a formula here in our objective cell, that's good. And we also want to make sure that formula is dependent on our variable cell, on the cell that we're going to change. So we could check that here, make it 1, 2, that profit margin cell change, so that's good. We also can see that revenue is dependent on units, cost is dependent on units, and so since the profit margin formula is including revenue and cost, it's also dependent on units. Now that everything is set up correctly, I encourage you to pause the video here and try to complete Solver on your own. Save your file now before you try Solver, and the answer you should get is 44.44 units, just like we did when we solved the problem manually using algebra. As long as your file is saved, you really can't mess it up. So give it a try, and then we can go through it together. Go ahead and pause now. Let's open up Solver again. Remember, it's under the Data tab, Solver. It still has the variables that we had in there before. If you ever want to reset everything in Solver, you can just select this Reset All button here. I'm going to go ahead and do that just so I have to manually enter it in again and get a feel for it. So like we said in your note packet, in this case, our set objective is profit margin. So I'm going to click into this box. Once I see that cursor blinking there, I can then cell reference over to where I have calculated profit margin. And I want to set it equal to a value of 0.15. You don't need that 0 in there, or you can have it. It doesn't change anything either way. So 0.15. I can't type in 15 and expect Excel to know that there's a percentage in this formula. It just doesn't work that way. That's just a format. It's not the actual number. The actual number would be 0.15. It just looks like 15% here because of formatting. And I'm doing that by solving for variables or by changing this variable cell until it reaches 15%. So I want to cell reference to that units cell. I also want to note that we're going to skip this middle portion for now. You may use this in a business analytics course, but we don't need it for now. So let's go ahead and just select solve. That menu is going to pop up again. We'll say OK to keep the numbers. And we can see here that we got an exact number of 44.44 units, which will round up to 45 in an answer. And again, this is exactly 15%, whereas before it was just rounding to 15% when we were plugging and playing ourselves. Now that we've solved for Q, or for units, using Solver, that includes our work on linear equations. The uses for Solver are quite expansive, but we'll go ahead and end here. Remember, the tool is available and practice it so you're ready to take it to the next level.